Everyone, and it's been a while. Thanks for tuning in. So today I want to talk about this Titan mini sub, which has been a big deal in the past week, and I'm not going to get into the specifics really about the company and the submarine and all that, but I want to talk about basically the augury of it, the symbolism, the way that it works with our collective unconscious, what it means going forward. I'm going to tie that into history a little bit. So, if you're not familiar, this Titan mini sub, it was operated by a tour company headquartered in Boston, Massachusetts, USA, called Ocean Gate. So Ocean Gate offered very expensive tours. Basically, the submarine would get loaded up on a ship, and they were diving on the Titanic, the RMS Titanic, which sunk back in, April 1912. It's in 13,000 feet of water. It's deep as hell, so it's like the big mountains in Colorado are about that high, as that water is deep. So it's extremely dangerous, and not something I would do if I had a choice. So, another way to think of this, the Empire State Building is about 1,000 feet high. So if you stack 13 of those, that's the depth. So extremely deep, extremely dangerous, unbelievable amount of water pressure. I don't even know how many atmospheres that is, but it's a lot. Because what the hell is it? It's like 10 meters of water is one atmosphere. So it's just thousands and thousands times more pressure than the atmosphere puts on our bodies as we sit here. So anyway, extremely deep and extremely dangerous. And when you're talking about deep water, especially the deep oceans, you're diving into the deep unconscious. The unconscious, your personal one, and then the collective one. Not really a place where humans are meant to go. It's kind of like going into space. You're going into the realm of the gods, the super consciousness when you go to space. And it's interesting, people who've been to space, they have actually ascended to the realm of the gods, which, Jesus, for example, is alleged to have done. So, really, if you wanted to, you could almost worship astronauts, because they've actually been there. We don't have to take anyone's word for it. Well, we do, but not to the same extent as, the Bible. Food for thought. So yeah, when you look in mythology, humans live in this zone that we call Middle Earth, right? Or Midgard, as it's called in the Germanic world. Even in Irish mythology, there's this concept of the middle world, and pretty much all mythologies and cosmologies everywhere. Not just mythology, but cosmology, the view of the cosmos. Even in ancient China, this world we live in is called the Middle Kingdom. So you get a lower kingdom and an upper kingdom. So space is like that upper kingdom, that heavenly kingdom, and the depths of the ocean, the deep earth caverns, that's the lower world, the lower kingdom. So this is something that's very dangerous about diving into the ocean like this. So let's get back to the point. I'm going off on a hell of a tangent. Ocean Gate is offering these tours. They were like tens of thousands of dollars. I want to say it was something like $40,000-$50,000 per passenger. So you had this submarine that could carry 5 people, so a pilot and 4 passengers. Now, this wasn't one of these submarines like James Cameron, screws around and that's like top shelf, top dollar. This thing was made with like off the shelf parts, and it was a company that was too woke for its own good. So the CEO who died on this thing, he said that he didn't want to hire 50-year-old white men because it doesn't inspire kids to get into ocean exploration. Well, 50-year-old white men are who retire from the submarine fleet, and they know about submarine maintenance. So the wokeness in the world just got another reality check. And really weird incident, because they had 48, what was it? They had 96 hours, 4 days worth of oxygen. And it was going to last, I think, until the evening this past Thursday. And, you know, it's interesting. They found a debris field and they said, oh, it's definitely the submarine. But they found it on the day that they were supposed to run out of air, and they heard the banging noises, but, you know, couldn't find the hull. So it's interesting, you know, they found it and they pronounced all the passengers dead on the day that the air was running out. And the U.S. government really seemed to sit on the search and rescue effort, kind of like when JFK Jr.'s plane crashed off of Massachusetts and Rhode Island. You know, it was between like Long Island and Martha's Vineyard off the coast of Cape Cod, Massachusetts. You know, there was a delay in the search effort. So a lot of different possibilities there. You know, this Pakistani billionaire could have been in some sort of dirty business with world leaders, which, you know, is highly plausible. Could have been in some dirty business deals with world leaders, you know, especially you're talking like the Biden family at this point. And he may have had to die because, you know, dead men tell no tales. Who knows? It's a possibility. I don't know. He was into a lot of different things. His businesses had relationships with SETI, which is the program that uses radio telescopes to scan the heavens for basically artificial signals. So it's like a search for extraterrestrial life. He was into all kinds of stuff, so who the fuck knows? Now, what gets really interesting here is the auguries of this. Now, they were exploring the wreckage of the Titanic, sank, 111 years ago. Didn't realize that. Interesting power number. So this Titanic, you know, it was a passenger liner, sank in April 1912, about, 400 miles southeast of Newfoundland. So off the coast of, when you're getting into northern Canada, actually, it's at about 41 degrees north latitude. So it's the same latitude as Boston, Massachusetts, but when you get that far out into the Atlantic, the icebergs in the spring still even come down that far. So the Titanic hit an iceberg, sank, all that stuff. Well, the way I look at the Titanic, that was basically the herald of globalism. And because there were several billionaires, American billionaires on board that ship that opposed the creation of the Federal Reserve Bank. Now, arguably, several presidents were assassinated because they would not cooperate with the formation of the Federal Reserve Bank. Abraham Lincoln, so he falls into the curse of the presidents. Abraham Lincoln, elected in 1860, assassinated in his second term in 1865. He, in his own letters, he said that the bankers were more dangerous than the Confederate Army because they wanted to bribe him to allow a private central bank to be created. They got rid of him, and then going forward, the president was protected by Treasury officers working for the bank. So Secret Service keeps the president under house arrest more than, you know, they protect the president from unauthorized harm. So when Central Intelligence needs to take out a president on behalf of their clients, Secret Service steps aside. So Lincoln was gotten out of the way, wouldn't sign off on a private central bank. 1880, it was Garfield, they were up to the same shit. 1900. I think it was 19. McKinley was elected 1900, but 1903 he was assassinated. He wouldn't sign off on a private central bank. And he was basically, by all these private interests, he was forced into the Spanish-American War, where the U.S. really went on an empire-building campaign, especially the banks and the mega corporations. Got that going. He tried to stop it, but couldn't. So they took him out. JFK was tampering with the banks. So the CIA. So yeah, it is. The point is before 1912, 3 presidents were assassinated for trying to stop the creation of a private central bank. People even tried to assassinate Andrew Jackson, who was the biggest opponent of the bank. So anyway, there were several American billionaires on board the Titanic. It was John Jacob Astor. Drawing a blank right now, but people of that caliber. I think there was a Guggenheim. So these fabulously wealthy American businessmen, bankers, entrepreneurs who opposed the creation of a Federal Reserve Bank because they knew it would enslave the country and eventually the world. And here we are. So they were basically raising awareness among their peers, people of that strata, of that same level of wealth. So when you look at the circumstances of the Titanic, evidence strongly suggests you had a ship captain with terminal cancer and he knew it. And so he was bribed. So the offer was that his family would be taken care of if he just steered that ship into an iceberg. So, and the ship didn't have enough lifeboats. The owners the White Star Line was totally arrogant about the whole thing. They said the ship was unsinkable. And it's interesting too, you have a book from I think 1898 called, it was The Wreck of the Titan, or Futility. And it was about a ship called the Titan hitting an iceberg in the North Atlantic and sinking after people saying it was unsinkable. So go check that book out. I definitely am. It's a novel. It's a fiction. Kind of like Baron Trump's Underground Adventure or 1900, The Last President. Check those out. So, yeah. It looks like with the Titanic, there are a lot of ulterior motives. So once these billionaire types who opposed the Federal Reserve foundation were out of the way, the next year, 1913, at Christmas, the corrupt U.S. President Woodrow Wilson and some corrupt members of Congress kept Congress open and illegally voted on and signed the Federal Reserve Act into law. And then World War I happened. Then you had, 1929, which had that Jupiter-Rahu conjunction in Aries, which I've been talking about a lot lately. And we had another one, but with an aspect of Saturn. So those two bookends are really, they signal the beginning and the end of globalism as we know it. But, sinking the Titanic, sending those American billionaires to the bottom of the ocean. It wasn't quite the dawn of globalism as we know it, but it was like a herald for it. It was really one of the first visible actions taken by these early globalists. So, and since then, since the sinking of the Titanic, there's been so much nostalgia, romance, myth, legend, mysticism just around the Titanic. So when you keep feeding emotion and thought into something, into a person, an object, a location, whatever, a land formation, whatever it is, or just even an idea, you keep feeding the energy of thought and emotion into it, it takes on a life of its own. And it'll almost kind of start eating. It'll want more energy. It'll want to grow and expand. So, with all of the attention that the Titanic has gotten in the last 100 years plus, I think people created like this thought form around the Titanic. Basically gave the wreck of the Titanic a life of its own. It's almost like a god in a way. Because as humans, we create the gods, all gods, even the Bible gods, not just the pagan ones. We give these forces of nature personalities so that we can better understand them and interact with them. So it's like, even when you're dealing with like Jehovah, the god of the Bible, that was a tribal storm god for the Phoenician Canaanites. There really was no ancient Israel, but you had Phoenicia and Canaan, it was the same place, just names in two different languages. So yeah, even Jehovah, he's a tribal storm god, and that's why he's so vengeful and angry and genocidal, because forces of nature kill people. And he was eventually adopted as the ruler of the universe, which I don't find accurate. So anyway, we create the gods as we know them. So the Titanic became a god in its own right, and it wanted to eat. So it's interesting. It's like the way you could look at this is like the Titanic itself, or the pursuit and the devotion to the Titanic, took the lives of these people. Now, something that this shows is that you don't have to be terribly intelligent to make a shitload of money and to have some prestigious career. You just have to be able to do one thing over and over, and you have to be kind of obsessed with it and just willing to put in a lot of hours and a lot of energy. Because, this Pakistani billionaire who died on there thought nothing of it. This submarine was piloted by a game controller that I think the cost of it was under $40. And the thing with mini subs too is that they have these huge windows so you can see out the front. And windows are very vulnerable at that depth. So military submarines, no windows. You can dive a lot deeper. So it was just very sketchy. So, it just goes to show some, billionaire of this, with this much money, with this much, prestige, and this many people kissing his ass all around the world, didn't have the common sense not to go on that thing. There were some billionaires who put deposits down and pulled out at the last minute. Some friends of Richard Branson. You can read about that. So, yeah, this guy didn't have a lot of common sense, and then his son who went on there was terrified of the whole thing, but went anyway. So these people, in pursuing the mystique of the Titanic, gave their lives to it. So, but I think this is very interesting. So I think this is the second time where we see people losing their lives on the wreck of the Titanic. So I think the whole thing has come full circle. So people lost their lives on the Titanic in 1912, and then this past week, people lose their lives diving into the abyss to go see it, diving into the deep unconscious. And, the deep unconscious is the underworld, and it's when you get into various world mythologies, there are, the eternal ones, the deep ones, the dark ones that live in the unconscious. So when I say the dark ones, I don't mean sinister satanic beings, but it's the dark side of ourselves. And world religions don't give people the tools to dive into their dark sides and make peace with them and harmonize with them. And they don't give them the tools to express their dark sides in very safe, creative, and constructive ways. Really, the world religions, there's something to hide behind. So people just hide behind purity and light and heavenliness. And they never deal with their dark sides. They never deal with their deep unconscious emotions. You know, their fears, especially their fears. Fear will fuck you up. Your health, your physical health, your mental health, and it keeps your life in chaos. So, yeah, world religions don't give people the tools to deal with their fear. They actually manipulate people with fear. So, yeah, so anyway, you know, the deep ones in the unconscious, these are the forces of the unconscious, which we as dwellers of the middle world, Middle Earth, are not really meant to interact with. So, and that's the risk of diving in. You know, physically, you go to the deep ocean, you could die. When people are ill prepared to go into their own unconscious, their unconscious mind, you know, they can go insane. And they can basically be, you know, plagued by their emotions that they refuse to face. You know, and really the most spiritual thing you can do is just face your emotions, face your own emotions. So this is very interesting. So yeah, I think this loss of life at this location where the wreck of the Titanic sits, it's a bookend. So 1912 was the beginning, the herald of globalism, and this new loss of life at that location heralds the end of globalism. And you know, you had a billionaire, international businessman, globalist billionaire die on there. So it's very apropos, highly symbolic. So it's like I've been saying, this is the end of globalism as we know it. The world is going to get more local as time goes on. People are going to be, countries are going to be minding their own business more. But, you know, you want to pay attention to what country you live in, what area of your country you live in, because once governments can't look around the world, they're going to start getting up the asses of their own people. You know, I just saw like a headline that said Barack Obama tells Joe Biden to address the situation in India with the mistreatment of this one minority group. And it's like, well, what the fuck does India have to do with the U.S. government? You know, people generally do not have, it's not that they don't have healthy boundaries, they don't have a sense of boundaries. And again, back to world religions, you know, especially Christianity, Islam, there's no sense of personal boundaries. You know, people are trying to go out and save other people and save their souls, and you know, they don't know how to mind their own fucking business. So these religions have been teaching people to not be able to mind their own business and not have personal boundaries. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. Depending on where you live in this world, you're either going to be living in a place where the people and the government are minding their own business, or the government's just going to get more up the asses of the people who live there when they can't go overseas and cause a bunch of chaos and havoc. So, yeah, this sinking of this mini-sub, this is it's a herald to the end of globalism. And it's not going to be overnight, but it's going to be pretty quick. So, like I keep saying, in 10 years, the world's going to look a lot different. And then in 50 years, it's going to be unrecognizable in a good way. So, hopefully we can all stick around that long. I mean, that's about it. But yeah, just wanted to kind of get that out of my head. Very interesting event. So, thanks for tuning in. Have a nice one.